Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the owner and founder of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and I'm going to be doing this video on the anxious attachment profiling um, topic. So, excuse me in advance because I'm like a little bit sick. I've been working a lot to prepare for this exciting launch, and I'm like a little under the weather, so my voice is a little scratchy. I'm probably a little more quiet and subdued than usual. But I really wanted to do this video because I knew a lot of people were waiting for it and asking me and emailing me, and I think this is a really important thing for people to just be able to really understand their attachment style, not just in a relationship context, but sort of like the character traits that come along with it. So before I start, I'll say really quickly, we are launching our online version of the Personal Development School this October 2nd. I am so excited. I don't know if I've been this excited about anything in a long time. And for people who sign up between now and the actual week of launch, so if you want to, you can click the link below just to submit your email so that you're reserved. You get access to a $49 a month membership. And after this month, when we do the launch, it'll be $119 a month. So literally, the $49 a month membership comes with 2 live webinars a week. So it'll be like a group coaching session with me twice a week for unlimited amounts of time. At launch, you'll get access to all the courses, and then we'll keep adding courses, 3 new courses every single month. You keep getting access to all unlimited courses, all previous recorded webinars as we do them each week if you miss any. And then on top of that, a group online forum where you can connect with people in the group, in your area, a whole worksheet and instructor for how to do mastermind groups if you want to break out into smaller groups with like-minded people in your area online and just connect and do work together and share tools and tips. And then obviously all the content comes with a ton of reprogramming tools, workbooks, worksheets, reminders, processes, like a ton of really amazing content. So I am really excited to just help people go through this transformation and process. And I've really made an effort to listen to what everybody needs. And I'm gathering feedback all the time. And so please feel free, like, you send me an email, if you comment in the survey questions that we have up, like anything, I listen, I go through all of the feedback, and I create courses and adapt things accordingly. Like literally, I decided to do the webinars because I was like, there's so many questions that people have, and I just want to have a space that people's questions can be answered. So those will come along with all the courses. Anyways, okay, let me go into this video. I'm really excited. So, the anxiously attached individual, I'm just going to go through 40 key traits that I tend to see. And again, remember, these are not for every single anxious attachment person ever, but these are general patterns that I see. Okay, so generally, anxiously attached individuals are very warm, very friendly, very giving, very generous people. They're like really amazing people to be around. Like they're really friendly, they're really kind, they're very thoughtful, and they tend to be pretty wise and aware of human behavior because they spend a lot of time patterning human behavior, at least at the subconscious level, without even necessarily intending to. They tend to be pretty aware. I won't say hyper vigilant, but very, quite aware, more aware than the average person about human behavior, micro expressions, incongruencies, and then maybe hypervigilant specifically as it relates to the potential for rejection. Anxiously attached individuals tend to put other people on a pedestal easily, which is a really sweet and endearing characteristic. But I find that anxiously attached individuals often don't see how wonderful they are. So they'll sort of like look at people and go, oh my gosh, this person's so amazing. I get the most loving emails from anxiously attached individuals, and they're so heartwarming. But you can feel sometimes that there's this minimization of yourself. Like, hey, it's so nice that you see the best in other people so much, but make sure you see the best in yourself as well. Because it's almost like they are underrated in the relationship towards themselves, if that makes any sense. And they tend to do this the most in romantic relationships. So they'll tend to put their partners on a pedestal and sort of diminish themselves accordingly. Like, oh, I'm not good enough for this person. And sometimes I'll see like the most amazing individuals who are anxiously attached in my office or in sessions, and they're so worthy and so deserving of their partner. And it's like they don't feel that at a gut level, if that makes sense. Like they feel that on one level, but they don't feel it like deep down. And so it's sort of this like reminder and the awareness that they have to show up that way. And another one is they also tend to um, like diminish themselves in their feelings and needs. So they will often like minimize their own feelings and needs next to those of others. And really it's because at a deeper subconscious level, the need for love and connection is so high, and there usually tends to be this story or this belief system for the anxiously attached individual that says like, for me to be worthy of love, or for me to get my needs met for love, I need to like make my needs less important than others, because if I speak up about my needs too much, they might leave me because it may not fit with theirs. And really that story doesn't hold up. Just to be fully transparent, usually it's the opposite. Usually, and it's like an important thing for anxiously attached individuals to note, usually the people who show up for their feelings and needs the most, and I can tell you this through like seeing thousands of people and having thousands of conversations with people and profiling different attachment styles over the past few years and things like that. One of the core traits I see is that the anxiously attached individual, one of the core qualities or patterns I see is that when we show up for our own feelings and needs more, people actually tend to like respect us more and feel a little bit more drawn to us, as opposed to when we repress our needs and people please a little bit too much. So it's really important for you as the anxious attachment, if you're watching this, to keep that in mind. Um, anxiously attached individuals tend to be very attractive. They tend to take really good care of their appearance, and not, obviously everybody, takes care of themselves in different ways, but as a general rule, they tend to be like a little bit focused on their appearance. Like they put time into it, and it's because, again, like they really value love and connection and feeling worthy and all these different things. Anxiously attached individuals sometimes morph themselves into who they think their partner wants them to be. And that can be a really painful quality, and it can breed a lot of resentment long term, because sometimes the anxiously attached individual will be like changing themselves for their partner, and then the moment their partner doesn't, forgets a small thing or doesn't show up for them in some way, it hurts a lot more, because it's like, I'm doing all this for you and you couldn't do that one thing for me. And a lot of conflict is basically born out of a perception of imbalance. So it's really important to note that. Anxiously attached individuals tend to expect their partner to text them all throughout the day. If they're a millennial, if they're older generations, they tend to want like, regular phone contact, maybe 2, 3, 4 times a day. They have fairly high expectations for this. Don't necessarily align with everybody else's. And so none are good or bad. But what's important is that you recognize that if you're the anxiously attached individual, that your expectations might be different. It may not be that somebody's rejecting you if they don't call you as much as you would like. It might be that they have a different like set of programs in their mind that expect different things. And so it's really important to have a transparent conversation about these things ahead of time, and then find a nice healthy compromise in the middle. Because I find with anxiously attached individuals all the time, they'll say to me things like, yeah, like he only calls me twice a day and it's so hurtful and and stuff like that. And that a lot of that stress and pain can be saved just by like having a transparent conversation with a partner. Like, hey, how often do you find it to be healthy to connect? How often do you think it's healthy to have a conversation on the phone and just have space over that stuff is super important. Um, um, Anxiously attached individuals tend to be naturally quite forgiving of their partners. Sometimes they'll even turn a blind eye to bad behavior in relationships. But I also find that anxiously attached individuals, while they might turn a blind eye to red flags, also don't tend to respond super well to other people telling them this. Usually they minimize it in their mind. They sort of downplay like the messages that people are giving them. Or if you push too much on that, they'll show up with a lot of resistance and pushback. And it's just because these are relationships, and love and connection are very high priority needs for the anxiously attached individual. So I often find it better if you're like the friend of an anxiously attached person, let's say, or somebody close to them, a parent, a loved one. Um, I find it better if you see red flags for them to actually just be there as a supportive role more than anything, to drop the red flags in, be consistent, have the conversation. But I find if you push back too much, sometimes it even severs the connection. And then they won't want to go with you to things because sometimes they feel embarrassed later or judged. And so sometimes it's better just to, sometimes the best way you can be supportive is not to push them to notice all the red flags when you notice that that's not working, but to keep telling them gently over time and consistently, but to be there as a supportive role actually tends to be the best way. isn't for everybody, but for the vast majority of anxiously attached individuals. They often try to impress people in relationships. They tend to get those feelings really quickly for romantic partners, and also for friends. Like, not romantic feelings, obviously, but those feelings of like, oh, I really connect to this person. I loved this person today. And they usually want those people to think that they're great and special and important. So, like, I'll often hear anxiously attached males say things to me like, I was thinking about taking this girl on the best date, or this woman on the best date, and I was going to take her to this place and that place, and I noticed in my thoughts that I was sort of like fantasizing about how to impress her. And that shows up a lot for the anxiously attached individual. And they tend to constantly want that emotional bond, deepening of connection, closeness. They're always kind of hungering for that relationship. They also tend to put relationships first in their life. It tends to be one of the highest priorities in their needs. And this isn't just romance. This can be romantic relationships. It can be friendships. It can be family relationships. Often, but not always, the anxiously attached individuals tend to be more in their feminine energy. So in their warmth, in their awareness of other people, their gentleness, their kindness, their thoughtfulness, their sweetness, really, and a little bit more passive about their feelings and needs. But I will see, this can be like a astoundingly contradictory one, because there's like a nuance here. So that they tend to be slightly more in their feminine energy as the female and as the male. Not than their masculine, but like more than the average man, if that makes sense. Like, very in touch with their feelings. And very expressive and good sharers and good connectors and things like that. However, don't mistake like a male being in his feminine energy for not having masculine energy, or not being like in charge of his masculinity at the same time. Usually for men, more so than women, the male will actually be like quite successful as a general rule, because usually in the way that we're conditioned, or the society that we grow up in, a lot of the messaging we get from the media is like, to be worthy of love as a man, you have to be strong, and you have to be successful. And so usually like these men know how to like take charge in certain ways, and tend to be quite successful as the strategy subconsciously to be worthy of love. And they tend to care still a lot, like, about what other people think. And if you ask the average anxiously attached male, you would probably get an answer, because I've asked this question a lot before. It says like, yeah, big driver for my success is to have like, to be really prepared for a great relationship, or to find like the perfect woman, or things like that. So anxiously attached individuals as well, they tend to be hypervigilant about knowing what other people need, how to impress people, how people are responding to them. And again, they'll easily forego their own needs to prioritize the need for approval or attention. They also have a tendency to express a lot and quite easily. They'll open up to people quite quickly. They're warm. They're easy to get to know. They make you feel quite comfortable in their presence. They have a tendency to speak in feeling-based language. They can be termed clingy or needy at times. And it's because they have these deep-rooted subconscious fears of people leaving. Like, that was a huge core wound in childhood, the inconsistency of the caregiver and the feelings of rejection. And so they get a ton of anxiety, a ton of stuff comes up in their nervous system when they think that they could be abandoned again. And they tend to have this constant fear of other people leaving. So relationships can run their lives a little bit. It can be sort of like the primary focus. And if they're not really prepared or working on themselves prior, sometimes it can sort of take the focal point of their life, and they can sort of sabotage without meaning to other areas of their life, because they're so focused on relationships. So if a relationship starts to go south, usually like career, they stop thinking about, friendships, things like that, family relationships tend to come like very secondary, because their focus is going way into that. And it can create this like imbalance a lot of times. They also have a lot of activating strategies. We know this, right? Which are basically excuses to get closer. So sometimes anxiously attached people will say things to me like, yeah, I know she said not to call me again, or for me not to call her again, but I think she was just doing that to test me and to make me, to see if I would actually call her. And so, sometimes there are these, like, instead of hearing the person saying, please don't call me for the rest of the evening, I'm upset, or I need space, or whatever it is, sometimes they project from their perception, because from their perception, one of their traits is that they tend to sometimes have these protest sort of behaviors to try to make their partner jealous or threaten to leave or push away, but really as a test to get the person to come closer. And it's just because they're in pain and they're afraid and they don't feel safe expressing the need outright. And so as a result of that, they project that their partner must need the same thing. And that can create a lot of these activating strategies where even though somebody's saying something to them, they may not listen fully, and they kind of think, oh, I should do it anyways, or I should try harder, I should do more, and they tend to be the ones that give these like grandiose gestures and acts of kindness and love, and they can be really beautiful, wonderful people to be in relationships with because they are the hopeless romantic and they express all of those romantic feelings to the nth degree, and they're going to show up that way in a relationship, which is really beautiful. But sometimes there's also this lack of being aware of boundaries at times, when especially in their romantic relationships. They can also be a little bit self-critical and often quite insecure. A lot of the internal dialogue of an anxious attachment person is very tough. And the question I would ask you to ask yourself is, how do you speak to yourself all day in your mind? And if somebody else spoke to you like that, or a good friend of yours started speaking to you like you speak to yourself all day, how would you feel? Because I think it's really important to notice our internal dialogue. Our internal dialogue has a massive impact on our emotional state, on our self-esteem, and that those two things, emotional state and self-esteem, have a dramatic impact on how we show up and how we feel in a romantic relationship. So if we're not doing well in those two areas, that can deeply sabotage a relationship over time. So be aware of that. They also tend to seek validation outside of themselves more than from themselves internally. Anxiously attached individuals tend to have some deep-rooted subconscious assumptions that they will be rejected, and obviously that produces a lot of insecurity and can create this imbalance in their lives, again, that we were talking about, when they over-focus on their partner. They're often the pursuers of a relationship. They're often the ones going after, initiating. And if they're not, if you're the female and you think that, oh, I shouldn't be like that, or something of that sort, usually you have to really put a lid on your feelings to not reach out. And usually there's this deep, feeling of control through those feelings. Anxiously attached individuals also tend to warm up much more quickly than their partner or than other attachment styles, and they tend to come back much faster to make up. And sometimes that can be incongruent with other attachment styles. And some, a dismissive avoidant, for example, might need a little bit more space for a little bit, and the anxiously attached assume that when I'm warm and ready, if my partner's not warm and ready, they're rejecting me again. That can be so painful for the anxiously attached person. So it's really important to note that just not everybody warms up as quickly. And that's for a whole bunch of reasons to do with subconscious programming and positive versus negative associations to human connection, as well as our needs hierarchy. But I won't get into all that right now. But just know that it's not necessarily a rejection. Sometimes people just take a little bit more time. I see a lot of people, when they recognize that fully and then apply it, it saves them a lot of stress in a relationship. They tend to also derive their self-esteem from a relationship a lot and who they have as a partner. And again, they can avoid expressing their feelings and needs because they're afraid that, what if I express my feelings and needs and they don't match my partner, or they're too much for my partner, and then I get rejected. They can also allow people to be advantageous of them sometimes. Like sometimes they feel taken advantage of and they can put themselves out there a little bit too much. And usually it's sort of like a deeper subconscious strategy to gain favor or to get love or get appreciation. And they can feel jealous and they can be a little bit more possessive out of that fear, but it's not always the case. But I would say a little bit more on average than the other attachment styles. And they tend to be amazing at knowing other people's needs. They tend to be really supportive. They show up really well in relationships, like, almost 100%. But they can repress their feelings for long enough that they do come out in kind of a messy way sometimes, and they can have these little outbursts. But as a general rule, they tend to be great friends, selfless people, have good hearts, and they're well-meaning. Even if they become needy or clingy, they're well-meaning. They're just afraid. It's just a person in fear if this isn't you and you're watching this about your partner. And last but not least, sometimes I see anxiously attached individuals over-explain. They try so hard to get their, heard, their feelings and perspective heard in relationships. And sometimes the over-explaining of the situation, instead of them just going directly to what their feeling is, can come across as critical or blaming. So for example, if somebody says, hey, you showed up late, and then after you showed up late, you forgot that it was my birthday the other day and didn't say anything. So you showed up late, and they can kind of go into like this over explanation of what happened, which, because they're really like, their partners will usually perceive as like blaming, which is not the case at all. They're literally just trying to get their feelings heard and understood. If this is you, you know exactly what I mean. Um, and so a really important shift in your communication has to be to express just your feeling and need. So instead it can be like, hey, I felt a little bit rejected, and a little bit hurt because of the lateness, and I know you were busy, but that's how I felt. And I really need you to be a little bit more conscientious about that in the future, because it doesn't make me feel good. And that's a pretty strong boundary I'd like to set, and for us to intend to keep going forward. So you can come across expressing the feeling and need in like a positive way, like, here's what you can do kind of way, instead of like over explain the situation to try to get the point understood, because often the person shuts down, doesn't hear the point, and then will later feel like, oh, you're blaming me, or accuse you of blaming, when I know through understanding the anxiously attached individuals quite deeply that that's never the intention. So those are some many points of the anxiously attached person. I know I said 40, and I intended to have 40, but I think I added a few as I went there. But I hope that was helpful, and thank you so much for watching, and I really hope to see you in the personal development school and be able to connect a little bit more online. Thank you so much for watching.